It's time for Lefties Losing It, and we love nothing more than hearing intersectional race baiting and political grandstanding from sports broadcasters, and Stephen A. Smith delivers the goods here. Apparently, all the accolades that Caitlin Clark is receiving is because she's white, and the jealous players who are attacking her are really the real victims here.
She is a white young lady, and she's been a magnet in a way that has benefited the league in ways that others have not. No matter how far we believe that we have advanced as a society, there's still such a long way to go, because in the end, if you're white, you're bright, you're right, and as a result, the shine comes your way in the eyes of a lot of people in America.
Oh, the idiocy did not end there. Apparently, Make America Great Again is synonymous with Make America White Again.
You have somebody that's a presidential candidate. What is his claim to fame? Make America Great Again. What have people interpreted that to mean? Make America White Again.
Well, that must be news to the majority of Hispanic voters who now back Trump instead of the Democrats. It must be news also to the growing number of black voters who are abandoning the Democrats to embrace the MAGA message. I'll be speaking to Josh Hammer about that very shortly. Now, we love a good vox pop on this program. Let's see what the young folk at a DC pro-Palestinian rally are thinking. Surely even this lot will not make excuses for rape, torture and slaughter of innocent Israelis on October 7.
Can you guys tell me a little bit about your goal here today?
As queer people, we have a duty to show up here and stand in solidarity with all of the other marginalized communities.
All of this kind of started October 7th. So what do you have to say about October 7th and the actions of Hamas?
I think definitely the protest started October 7th, but this issue did not start October 7th.
I guess October 7th they did something. They came out of trying to fight back, because they've been oppressed for so many years.
Hamas is the reaction. It's not a problem. Hamas is the result of the situation.
Other young people out there, should they come out and protest and show their support for Hamas?
I think they should.
And your sign says, "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free."
Yeah.
Can you tell me which river and which sea we're talking about here?
This is you've caught me on the spot, and I'm really horrible when asking questions. But basically, the river and the sea that border both sides of Palestine, where Israel is right now.
Oh dear, and here are more college kids who are frightfully stupid. Enjoy.
Did you guys see that Al-Qaeda just thanked you guys? They thanked all the college protesters and everything. Houthis, Hezbollah, Hamas. Does that make you happy?
Yeah.
Of course, we're supported.
It makes me feel like there's actually some kind of hope.
For $100. Who was the terrorist group behind 9/11?
No clue.
ISIS.
Al-Qaeda. So you think that 9/11 had some justification?
Good in some ways.
Wow. Can you guys find Gaza on a map?
I think we need a better map.
Can't find it.
No.
Who is the #1 sponsor of global terrorism?
America.
I think the U.S.
New York.
Well, New York's a state.
Starbucks.
That's Zach Sage, who does great work exposing these lefties losing it.
Where is slavery legal in the Middle East?
Israel,
In Yemen, the Houthis brought it back.
Oh my God.
Wow.
What's a Houthi?
Where is the only country where it's legal to be gay in the Middle East?
I would say Asia. I don't know.
Do you know it's Israel?
I don't consider it a country. I would go to Palestine.
If you went to Palestine, you'd be thrown off of a building. Tel Aviv's like the gayest city on earth.
I doubt it's the gayest city on earth.
It's really gay. You know what the #1 slogan the Iranian government chants is? Death to America.
Honestly, I kind of don't blame them.
Really?
Now to California, the bluest of blue states, where the LA City Council is taking down a no U-turn sign in the name of equity, tolerance and inclusion. What?
LA City Council members Hugo Soto Martinez and Nithya Raman were on hand today to help remove the signs. They say the no cruising and no U-turn signs were put up in the 1990s to prevent people in the gay community from meeting up with other gay people.
I was also surprised that these U-turn signs were still up. And at first, they seem a little, oh, okay, it's just a no U-turn sign. But when you learn the history of it and you realize that these were used to profile gay people.
Really, these activists are almost beyond parody. The descent into full-blown leftist lunacy is pretty much complete. And I think it's time to check in on the leader of the free world again, another incoherent rant. Here he has a little mini meltdown. Watch him completely mix up a well-known expression as he casually threatens Israel.
And I know you're a typical press guy. You're grabbing me in front of this all of a sudden. And I trust you as far as I throw your phone. I have a good arm, man. I'm sure you can. I can throw it a long way. But my point is this. Yes. I have made very clear to the Israelis what they have to do in the near term. If they don't, what's going to happen?
So what's going to happen? Is the U.S. going to cut off?
Across the West, we continue to see anti-Israeli, anti-West protesters run riot. They're even harassing their fellow lefties in the lefty heartland of Washington, D.C.
People who eat at Tate, the most basic Israeli establishment in D.C. Here we have some mediocre white people to start the day off. More mediocre white people. More mediocre white people. Thank you for the smile, sir. There, a chubby, mediocre white man. Hi, excuse me, ma'am. Can we ask you your stance on Palestine? Any stance, ma'am? No stance? No stances? No? Just what do you have for brunch? Some shakshuka? Some Palestinian shakshuka? Aib aleki ya kalba. You guys, we're going to give you a pass, but next time, please skip Tate. It's owned by devilish white people.
Joining me now is Newsweek Senior Editor-at-Large and Article 3 Project Senior Counsel Josh Hammer. Josh, we've seen these protesters take over university campuses. They have these illegal encampments there. We've seen them cause enormous damage to property and openly threaten people. We've even seen acts of violence. And yet, as you have written in the New York Post, where are the consequences? Why are blue cities in particular turning a blind eye to this lawlessness?
You know, Rita, it is certainly not for lack of available options. There are any number of options that federal prosecutors have. I mean, there is the Ku Klux Klan Act going back to 1871, which was passed in the aftermath of the American Civil War, which basically bans people from a mass conspiracy, especially if you go in disguise, if you wear masks, like a lot of these protesters have been doing. You are forbidden from doing that en masse so as to deprive your fellow American citizens of their constitutional rights. There is a civil analog to that. There's, of course, material support for terrorism, which is a federal criminal offense. But the point is that whether at a federal level or at a local level, when it comes to, lower level local crimes such as harassment, intimidation, a lot of this stuff on the street, you don't have a free speech right, Rita, in our country. You don't have a First Amendment free speech right to intimidate and to harass people. You have a free speech right to make your opinions known on the issues of the day. You don't have a right to get into someone's face and to say that you want them to die, that you want to call for genocide. This was the error that the Harvard president made, of course, in the infamous December 2023 congressional testimony that led to her resignation. But the point here, and this is what I wrote about for the New York Post, whether it's the federal level, whether it's the local level or anywhere else, there was a very, very simple and straightforward reason that prosecutors and law enforcement in general are not bringing these charges, which is that, one, they probably largely, at least in left-wing jurisdictions, agree with the underlying conduct. Two, as we saw in the 2020 Antifa Black Lives Matter riots, and as we've seen again since October 7th, these are very violent people. These are violent people who take no prisoners. These prosecutors and cops don't want to be on these miscreants' bad side any more than anyone else wants to be. So they agree with the woke orthodoxy, and they don't want to get themselves hurt. What that creates, obviously, is a toxic stew. America is currently failing its Jews, and by extension, it is not merely just failing its Jews, it is failing us all.
Absolutely. We've got this two-tier policing, this two-tier justice system where if you were out there protesting from some right-wing cause, you would have the authorities come down on you like a ton of bricks. But if they agree with your viewpoint, you can get up to the mischief we've seen. And calling it mischief is really underplaying it, because sometimes it is just violent intimidation and nothing else. Now, even a broken clock is right twice a day. And so I was interested in this analysis from CNN on the historic levels of support the Republicans are getting from black folk under Trump. They are perplexed, the folk at CNN, but they acknowledge this is a seismic shift.
And more than that, it's not just that Joe Biden is losing ground, it's that Donald Trump is gaining ground. You go from 7%, single digits at this point in 2020, to now 21%. And again, John, I keep looking for signs that this is going to go back to normal, and I don't see it yet in the polling. If anything, right now we're careening towards a historic performance for Republican presidential candidate, the likes of which we have not seen in 6 decades. Look at black voters under the age of 50. Holy cow, folks. Holy cow. Look at this. Joe Biden was up by 80 points among this group back at this point in 2020. Look at where that margin has careened down towards. It's now just, get this, 37 points. That lead has dropped by more than half, Mr. Berman. I just never seen anything like this. I'm like speechless, because you always look at history and you go, okay, this is a historic moment. If this polling is anywhere near correct, we are looking at a historic moment right now where black voters under the age of 50, which have historically been such a big part of the Democratic coalition, are leaving it in droves.
Josh, Donald Trump has launched his Black Voter Coalition group. His campaign is saying historic rates of black voters are now behind the Republican candidate. And if those CNN figures are accurate, what's that going to mean for the Democrats going forward? They have just relied on getting 90% plus of the black vote for decades now.
Yeah, you know, Rita, I'm trying not to laugh too hard over here because Harry Enton is the CNN data analyst that we just saw. I've actually known Harry since he and I were both 18 years old. He and I go way back. He's probably the only straight shooter at CNN. He is not a far left liberal guy. He calls it like he sees it, but Harry knows his audience, and he knows that the CNN audience is a liberal audience. So he's just trying to do what any good television broadcaster should do, which is just try to be very honest with your audience. And here, honesty means that Joe Biden's intersectional coalition is falling apart. Black voters are peeling away at record pace for very simple bread and butter reasons, because the economy in the United States has never been good. Bidenomics, they teased it out like a wet balloon that went absolutely nowhere last year. They haven't talked about Bidenomics since November. They for a little while, that's all I talked about. Then they decided that they couldn't bamboozle Americans into thinking the Bidenomics was anything other than a stink bomb, so they let it go. Inflation, of course, reached 9.1%, a 40-year high back in the summer of 2022. The economy formally entered a recession back in that same year, 2022. So black voters are peeling away from Joe Biden for the same reason that many underrepresented minorities, Hispanic voters among them, are peeling away, which is that they don't like the way that the country is being governed right now. And if these numbers are real, and as Harry said right there on CNN, we have every indication to believe that the shift actually is real, especially for young black men. Young black men are now supporting Trump 25, sometimes even 30% in polls. That could easily make or break the election when it comes to states like Michigan, Georgia, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, all of which have sizable black populations there. But the broader point to read is that the entire post-2008 Barack Obama, Joe Biden era Democratic Party, which is built on the house of cards of intersectionalism and identity politics, it's all falling apart right now. They're stuck between a rock and a hard place when it comes to the Middle East conflict, obviously. They can't make the Arab voters in Michigan happy, but then they can't make the Jewish voters happy either, or the majority of Americans who support Israel for that matter. So everywhere you look, this whole identity politics thing is falling apart for them. And, you know, frankly, as a conservative, I kind of love to see it.
And you're absolutely right about this intersectional coalition falling apart, because it's not just black voters leaving the Democrats. There are increasing numbers of other ethnic groups, including Hispanics, who now prefer Trump to the Democrats. A number of polls have shown a majority of Hispanic voters backing the Republicans. And a new poll shows that a majority of registered voters from all backgrounds are now in favour of mass deportations of illegal immigrants. According to a new YouGov poll, 62% want to see mass deportations. And that includes, Josh, a clear majority of Hispanic voters. And I've long said that Hispanics will become part of the Republican base. They are typically socially conservative, they're aspirational, and the Democrats have really little to offer them at the moment other than victimhood and pronouns.
Yeah, look, I live in South Florida. I mean, this is kind of the epicenter of the Hispanic part of America moving to the right. I mean, Miami-Dade County, which is the most populous county in all of Florida, Ron DeSantis won that by double digits. In his gubernatorial reelection in 2022, he won Miami-Dade County, which is a 70% Hispanic county. He won it by 11 points. Marco Rubio, our senator here in Florida, won by 10 points. And a lot of people look at that and they say, oh, it's Miami-Dade County. It's just these Cubans. They're all conservative because they're fleeing the Castros and communism. It's actually not true. So in Osceola County here in Florida, which is a suburb of Orlando, heavily Puerto Rican county, Puerto Ricans historically a very, very liberal demographic here in the United States. Osceola County, Florida, actually voted for Ron DeSantis and Marco Rubio as well in 2022. Going back to 2020, even in heavily Mexican South Texas, down in the Rio Grande Valley, you had 90 to 95% Hispanic counties like Starr County, Texas, Zapata County, Texas, which some of them were actually outright breaking for Trump, but then Trump was actually very narrowly losing others by single digits. The broader shift is happening, and like I was just talking about with black voters, it's the same thing for these Hispanic voters, Rita. They don't like the way the economy is doing. They want their communities to be secure. They want people to be able to walk the streets safely without fear of being mugged, and they care about general public safety and deterring violence just as much as white voters or anyone else. So I am not surprised to see these data points, but I certainly do hope that they are giving Democrats a lot of heartburn.
Now to Texas, and the Department of Justice has indicted a whistleblowing doctor who exposed how a Texas hospital was continuing to perform sex change procedures and treatments on children as young as 11, despite announcing they were shutting down their gender clinic after Texas banned surgical procedures and prescription treatments for transgender youth. Dr. Ethan Haim, a surgeon at the Texas Children's Hospital, is accused of accessing and obtaining information belonging to these patients without authorization. And if convicted, he faces up to 10 years in federal prison and a $250,000 maximum fine. Tell me about this case, Josh. This seems to be a whistleblower who is being punished for doing the right thing. How could he possibly expose this if he didn't access that information?
Right. So the DOJ is alleging that they're saying that he violated HIPAA, which is a patient privacy protection statute that's existed in the United States for a number of decades now. But the point here, Rita, is that they're picking the target very carefully here. The very nature of prosecution is that prosecutorial resources are scarce here. I mean, you learn this as a first-year law student going back to criminal law course. No prosecutor literally has the manpower, the time, the resource, or anything in order to prosecute every possible offense that comes across his or her jurisdiction. The fact that they are going after this whistleblower who, again, laudably and nobly was blowing the whistle because the Texas Children's Hospital was lying. Rita, they were lying. They said that they were cutting back on these genital mutilation, so-called surgeries, on chemical castration. They said in response to pressure from Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton and Governor Greg Abbott, they said in response to that they were finally shutting it down, and they lied about it. That is why this whistleblower came out and said, you know what? Mr. Governor, Mr. Attorney General, they're telling you one thing, they're not doing it. So the fact that he's being prosecuted for doing the righteous, noble, just, and correct thing here on dubious statutory grounds says everything they need to know about America's further unraveling weaponization of our law enforcement apparatus.
And you've seen that trust in the justice system at historic lows in America, and we know why. It's very much a justified point of view. Josh Hammer, always a pleasure to hear from you.